You are with the big story here. Thanks for being with us. Let's make a start with today's top focus here being the approaching cyclone Amphan, in which the two affected states are going to be Odisha and West Bengal. Preparedness on ground and people who have been evacuated in the low-lying coastal areas here. Union Home Minister Amit Shah having spoken to chief ministers of both the states of Odisha and Bengal, assuring all central government help when required. This is being termed as the super cyclone. Remember, last when India was hit in the region in the super cyclone was way back in 1999. So this is happening after all these decades. The Cabinet Secretary having called a meeting of the National Crisis Monitoring Committee to review India's preparedness. Let's get in further inputs. We have with us our correspondent Ayushman in all of those preparations on ground and the number of people so far who've been evacuated from the low-lying coastal areas. And also, Ayushman, preparing after the landfall. This is going to be electricity communication lines being snapped and further impacting the situation, which is already very difficult in the wake of COVID and the lockdown.
Yes, sir. In fact, a large population of people residing near the coastal belt has to be evacuated from that side, and they have to be keeping in mind the social distancing norm, which are there as per the MHA guideline. That is really becoming a challenge for the state government, both in Odisha and Bengal. That's why we have seen continuous meetings taking place at the national level. The NDMA's meeting was there with the Prime Minister yesterday, and today also the Cabinet Secretary is meeting the state officials through video conferencing. We have seen the Home Minister interacting with the Chief Minister of Bengal and Odisha, extending them all the support that is needed from the center. We have seen the NDRF and the State Disaster Relief Fund deployment in the state. Additional troops have been kept in the neighboring states so that if the challenge is huge, the teams will be mitigated to the relevant state. We are expecting the landfall tomorrow, and currently if you see the prediction which has been given by the meteorological department, it clearly says that the speed currently of the cyclone in the Bay of Bengal, with which it is approaching, it is somewhere higher than what we witnessed in super cyclone in 1999. And that is why the first and most important task for the authorities on ground is to remove all those people who are there residing in the coastal belt. And in a span of 1 year, less than 1 year, Odisha is facing the second cyclone. We know for the last time they faced the cyclone Fani, and currently the district officials on ground have been told to evacuate completely. Like you mentioned, the communication line, the electricity remains somewhere vulnerable for once the cyclone comes, the damage will be there, and for that only the backup plan is there. The generators have control, and also the NDRF teams have been sent on ground for letting people know that they have to evacuate.
All right. Well, that's a fairly detailed input there, Ayushman. Thank you for getting us those inputs. And remember, Ayushman, with massive experience on ground for having covered Cyclone Fani last year and the fallout, the impact of that, the cyclone that had in the cities of Odisha, including the capital city last year. Then let's get in an input from experts with us. We're glad to have Mr. S.N. Pradhan, DG of the NDRF. Mr. Pradhan, thank you for being with us this afternoon from the NDRF headquarters there. We are looking at preparedness on ground, and this time what makes a huge difference is one, of course, that we're dealing with the super cyclone, which is of the same grade. The last time that India saw was way back in 1999, which was decades ago. And more importantly, this is preparedness in the midst of a lockdown. How difficult has it been?
I think the problem this time is that this is a rapid transformation. We had not anticipated the transformation to be so quick. So it transformed from a super cyclone or a severe cyclone to a super cyclone very quickly. And after that, the preparations had to be done accordingly. And we are on ground. And right now, as we speak, there are going to be 21 teams in all deployed actually in West Bengal, various places, especially 6 potentially impacted districts. two of which are very important, the East Midnapur and specifically 24 Pargana, South 24 Pargana. But also in Odisha, which probably will be not as much affected as West Bengal because there is the landfall going to be in West Bengal. Even then, Odisha has been given 15 teams on ground and 5 teams are on standby.
Okay. Also, Mr. Pradhan, this is, of course, in the fallout post the landfall here, because we are expecting communication and electricity lines to be impacted, to be hit. This is perhaps going to take a few days to restore. How would you think it's going to fare this time around to be having an absolute blackout of both electricity and communication at a time when there's a complete lockdown as well?
Well, that's a dual challenge. I have spoken of it elsewhere also. If not a double jeopardy, it is kind of a dual challenge that we are facing. This is cyclone in the time of COVID, to be put in one phrase. And this is going to be a dual challenge for all the agencies on ground, specifically for the NDRF, because it is probably rescue and take part in relief efforts on ground in areas which are pronounced as red zones or affected zones. So it is a dual challenge. The other aspect about damage to infrastructure, to electric poles, to electric lines, to the telecom lines, to kacha houses, houses with asbestos and tin roofs, that is very real. And anything in excess of 120, we are already talking of landfall speed of 190 odd or 185 at least. So if anything in excess of 120 is going to be damaging, and it has damaging potential, especially in the areas where poor people live. So it is a real challenge facing us, and the time of COVID, it becomes doubly so. But as we speak, what has happened in the process, the government of India has taken this very seriously, and you can make out that only on 18th, yesterday, there were 3 meetings on 3 different platforms of disaster response ecosystem in India. The Prime Minister held a meeting, a review meeting himself. The Home Minister held a review meeting, and on the same day, the Cabinet Secretary held the National Crisis Management Committee meeting, which was followed up again today. So you can see the seriousness being attached by Government of India to the build-up cyclone, and that is why it is expected that the states also will coordinate with us and do the needful.
Right. Mr. Pradhan, India having faced the super cyclone way back in 1999, but is that an experience that is going to help us positively today in terms of preparedness, also with in terms of wherewithal, India infrastructurally being in a much better position today?
Well, it is not only the infrastructure, but the policy efforts that have followed the super cyclone in 1999. We must remember that in 1999, we did not have a disaster management ecosystem, not to speak of even a disaster management authority. So this has happened only after we 3 disasters back to back, literally. After the 99 cyclone, super cyclone in Odisha in October, there was the 2001 Bhuj earthquake, which was also massive. And then in 2004, which was just 2 years later, there was this tsunami in the southern part of India, which again was massive, and thousands of lives were lost. So I think we learned a lesson from that as a country, and we have set up a disaster management ecosystem. So while we have developed in terms of infrastructure, the policy of disaster management and disaster governance, so to say, as a mainstreamed part of normal governance, has come to the now. And I must compliment the present government that in the process now, disaster governance is treated as mainstream governance, and chief ministers are also taking it up very seriously. And now there is a lot of synergy between the federal government and the state government, and it is treated as a common enemy that has to be tackled together with synergy and a lot of coordination.
Absolutely. Also, Mr. Pradhan, when we talk about preparedness once again, which is in the midst of COVID, which is in the midst of this lockdown, to what extent social distancing norms, which is an absolute imperative today has been taken into account in evacuation of people from the low-lying coastal areas and the other norms of the lockdown as well? To what extent those have been followed to the T as well, and how difficult has it been?
Well, to start with, I must say it is quite difficult. It is easier said than done, but we must make an attempt, because after all, COVID is also a challenge that has to be taken into account. So what we are doing is, the states have come back to us saying that the cyclone shelters, which had, say, a capacity of 1,000, will now have a capacity of 500. So you will have to have additional shelters. Maybe the schools nowadays is that the schools are all closed, colleges are all closed. So those buildings probably will be converted into temporary shelters for the cyclone, and that could come in handy. But yes, these measures are now required because the social distancing norms have to be made, the quarantine norms have to be met, and also the the hygiene norms have to be met, along with washing of hands and sanitizing, etc. So the cyclone shelters are being sanitized, and new shelters are being temporarily added, and they are also being sanitized. So all this is in light of the COVID-19 challenge also. But I must be very frank and say that it is easier said than done. It can be very difficult, and there could be minor compromises made, but I think that is the way things will be, because it is a dual challenge which has to be tackled by the same administrative machinery which is handling COVID.
Yes, Mr. Pradhan, Mr. S.N. Pradhan, thank you so much for speaking with us, DG of the NDRF. Remember, this is a twin challenge there, can't be emphasized enough. We're already in a situation of a global pandemic, with the Epidemics Act having been invoked across the country, keeping all of those norms that are already in place, which is social distancing, which is sanitizing, which is self-hygiene, all of that in place, and yet managing to evacuate people well in time. That has been the challenge here in preparedness of the super cyclone, which has now suddenly turned into a super cyclone, Cyclone Amphan, with preparedness across 2 states in West Bengal and Odisha. On that note, on the big story, we're slipping into a very tiny break here. Please stay on with us. We're looking at yet another set of protests that's coming in from the migrants, and this time it is in Mangaluru in Karnataka. They have gathered in large numbers, entirely breaking out of patience and protesting. They're protesting right outside the Milagros College, which is in Mangaluru. They're demanding transport facilities to go back home. Remember, in all of these years, in all of these days, while we're looking at day 56 of the lockdown today, the migrants have continued to demand the very, very basics. Either be provided food, shelter, which several still don't have access to, or be provided the transport to go back home. This is a protest in asking for those transport facilities. They've been provided temporary shelter here, which is at the college itself, by the district administration. Let's take a listen, an official bite here that's coming from the commissioner on this.
आपको भी भेज देंगे, आप लाख है, आपको भी भेज देंगे। आज हो रहा था इंतजाम, हमारे तरफ से ऑलरेडी चिट्ठी गई है, आज शेड्यूल होना था, रेलवे का थोड़ा प्रेशर है, मैक्सिमम कल या परसों हो जाएगा, 99% कल हो जाएगा, ठीक है? तो शांति से रहो, अभी अच्छा खाना आ जाएगा, और भी कुछ प्रॉब्लम है तो जो लोकल ऑफिसर होंगे वो ख्याल रखेंगे।
Of City Police. More breaking inputs here. This is coming in from another part of the country. This is in Bandra, which is in Mumbai. Once again, we're looking at a large gathering of migrants here. They have walked across here all the way to the Bandra bus terminus. The Bandra terminus, but this is to catch the train They wanted to catch the train for Bihar, but only 1,200 people who are allowed to board the train, and now the rest of them are waiting. They're waiting for the next batch of train to come in. How long would that wait be? Unsure. We have with us our correspondent Santhia Gora getting us those details here. What is the situation on ground? Out of so many who gathered, 1,200 managed to board the train. Take a look at those images here. Once again, we have a very, very large gathering. Remember, out of which 1,200. That's no small number. 1,200 migrants have already managed to board today's train leaving from this Bandra terminus to Bihar. But there's still so many more hundreds who are still left here, right there waiting for the next train. The police, of course, has been giving them further inputs here. But remember, this is a very tight coordination each time between two states. Which is the departing station and the destination station between two states, of further coordination to understand the next batch of trains that would be coming in. This is a train that left for Bihar earlier with 1,200 people who are allowed to board. The rest of the migrants, as you can see now, have been left to wait. They are waiting once again near the station. There have been other instances reported by a team as well across several parts of the country where migrants have ended up waiting for about 2 days, 3 days with no other place to go back, no home to go back. They have resorted to just pitching tent at the railway station itself, waiting for that next batch, waiting for more information, ascertaining if their documents and paperwork is in place here. Some of the self-help centers that should have been larger in number at the railway station by the authorities to be giving that information to the migrants. Many migrants have remained clueless on what is to happen next, on where is the transport facility to be coming in next. So these are the set of migrants now who are waiting. 1,200 of them already having boarded the train to Bihar. Our correspondent Santhia getting us those live images, further live inputs on ground here. Santhia, help us understand of all of these migrants who are now left. When is the next train to come? For how long will they be waiting? Will they be allowed to wait here at the platform itself?
See, when exactly will the next train come, is going to come, that is something which we don't know. The migrants also don't know. That's exactly why the panic is increasing. So the protest happened at Bandra terminus. It all started with the information of this train which is going to go to Bihar. That information got spread and many, hundreds of them actually started walking towards Bandra terminus. 1,200 people, 1,200 migrants who got to board that train, but most of them couldn't. So what happened was, now who exactly were the ones who were waiting at Bandra terminus? Those who couldn't wait, those who couldn't board the train to Bihar started waiting outside Bandra terminus and under a flyover, Bandra terminus flyover. Some of them actually got a call today morning that their turn to board that train has come, but despite that they were not allowed to go because they were, according to these migrants, there were no communication at the boarding point. That's why when they were trying to tell also that it's their turn, this is their form and this is their code number, nobody listened to them. Other than that, some people who actually heard that the train is going to go, they tried to, they thought that they'll try their luck and they gathered at Bandra terminus. So when we reached there, there were people who were sitting under Bandra terminus in patches. There were around 300 migrants. And after some time, those migrants started chanting slogans. They started protesting. They were chanting slogans against Bihar's Chief Minister Nitish Kumar. And then after that, police started dispersing the crowd. And then those people, they had to walk back with their luggage with them. And as of now, they have no clarity when will the next train go and when will their turn to go back is going to come.
Santhia, where have they walked back? Where had they come from exactly? Were they provided shelter and food? Are they being kept well by the state government there? And are they going to be back next morning? Because there is no clarity and they would be really taking their chances every day.
See, sir, most of these migrants who were supposed to board this train are actually from the nearby areas only, Bandra East. Some of them are from Bandra West, some of them are from Nirmal Nagar area. So they are going to walk back, as we have some of the visuals also where we can see them walking back. When exactly they are going to come back, whether or not they'll come back like this, we can't say as of now. As far as the arrangements for them are concerned, the way the way they are desperately trying to go back clearly states that how they are they are not properly treated here, they are not well fed, they are not well kept. That's exactly why at any cost they just want to go back. So that clearly shows that they are not in a safe situation here. That's why they want to go back. So as of now, whether they'll come back or not, that we don't know. But one thing is clear, that they have no clarity as of now when exactly the next train is going to go and whether or not they will be able to board that train or not. Seher.
All right, this is the crisis for the migrants. Absolutely tragic. That continues each given day that we look at. Santhya, thank you for getting us those inputs. These are details now of migrants once again. That is coming in from Bengaluru. This is regarding the bus services that several would be availing as well, even those in the city now who would be going about in wanting to attend office as well, where work from home is not possible. So the inter-district and city bus services that have resumed operations today, this is keeping in mind in certain relaxations that were brought about in phase 4 of the lockdown. But these bus services, of course, in maintaining social distancing norms, would be running on half capacity and barely 30 passengers allowed per bus. Karnataka government has made thermal screenings imperative here at the terminal before anyone boards the bus. Our correspondent Neha getting us further inputs. This one is specifically coming in from the Majestic bus depot in Bengaluru.
Well, the Karnataka government has decided to start the inter-district transportation of buses today across the state of Karnataka, and we're here in a KSRTC bus, and I'd like to show you, well, of course, initially they had said that 30 passengers would be accommodated on the bus and that there would in fact, of course, be distance that's actually maintained. But this again brings us back to the question, if you can see, yes, while one seat has been left vacant between two people, is that really enough? We're talking about kids who are traveling on this bus. There are going to be senior citizens who are traveling on this bus, and there are going to be many other people as well who are traveling on this bus. So again, of course, this brings us back to the question, while a sanitizer has been made available and people have been urged to wear the masks, this really brings us to question as to whether, of course, the capacity of these buses should be further reduced or not, because as you can see, as advised, that the distance should at least be a little bit more than what we can see here right now. But we'll have to wait and see how the government really handles this situation, and for how long, of course, this is actually going to continue.
Okay, that's a facility well provided now by the state government of Karnataka. On that note, it is a wrap on the big story. Stay on with us, please. News and updates that continue for you right here.